Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Math with Dr. War. Today I'm going to be doing a foundational video where I'm going to be finding the volume of a cylinder, a cone, and a sphere. And the reason I chose these three solid shapes is because they all have a circular base. Now, before we can begin finding the volume, we have to be able to identify radius and diameter and also be able to calculate them if either of these are given to you. Now, let's first define radius. So I'm going to draw a circle here. I'm not a great artist, so bear with me. So here's my circle. Now, if you have a distance which is coming from the center of your circle to the edge, that is what we call our radius. So if the distance given to you starts at the center and goes to the edge, that is your radius. On the other hand, the diameter is the distance that cuts your circle in half. It actually goes through the center of the circle. So if you have a distance that looks like it's cutting your circle in half, we call that the diameter. Now notice that the radius starts from the center and goes to the outskirts. Now if I start here from my center and go to the edge, I will have another radius. If I add those two radiuses together, it gives me the diameter. Or what some folks do is they take their radius and multiply it by 2. If you're given the radius and have to find the diameter, always remember the diameter is 2 times your radius. Whatever your radius is, just multiply it by 2 and you'll get the diameter. If you're given the diameter, remember the diameter cuts your circle in half. And if we want the radius, we're only starting from the center and going to the edge. So notice that's just half of the diameter. So remember radius is half of the diameter. So if you're given the diameter and you have to find the radius, just divide it by 2. So here's my first circle. I know that the distance is starting from the center and going to the edge. So that 3 is my radius. So my radius is 3 yards. And if I want the diameter, remember the diameter is the distance that cuts your circle in half. So if this is 3, because this is from the center to the edge, so from the center to the other edge will also be another 3 yards. If I add that together, I get 6 yards. So that's my diameter. Or you could have simply done 3 times 2, but you do what you like. Over here, this is my circle. I notice that the distance that's given to me is actually cutting my circle in half. Therefore, this 36 is my diameter. So my diameter is 36 inches. And in order to find the radius, remember the radius is from the center to the edge, which is only half. So I'm going to take my 36 and divide it by 2. So my radius is actually 18 inches. Okay, so the first shapes that I'm going to find the volume of are cylinders. So whenever you have a cylinder, I tell my students, a cylinder is like if you have a can of Coke or a can of soup. So always notice what a cylinder looks like. You have a circular base and then a column. So here's my first example I have to find the volume of. I'm going to first identify what is given to me. This 11 represents my height. And here I'm starting at the center and going to the edge, so the 6 is the radius. When you're on the TASC test, they're going to give you a formula sheet. And if they ask you to find a volume, go to the formula sheet, find volume, find your shape. I know this is what I'm working with, a cylinder. Here is the formula. It says V equals to pi r squared h for height. And always look at the bottom. They always give you a key. V is volume, R is radius, H is height. And if you see the big B, or let's say uppercase B, it means area of the base. So cylinder, volume, pi, r squared, height. So we're going to start to fill in. For this question, I'm not going to use the calculator because I find that students forget how to calculate when they get on the non-calculator section. So this looks nice. This can be on the non-calculator section. So you find the volume. Always write your formula first. Then let's fill in, like when you're evaluating algebraic expressions. I'm going to keep pi as pi. My radius is 6 squared. And my height is 11. So remember, I can't use the calculator. So I'm going to keep pi as pi. 6 squared is 36. You should know that. 6 times 6. And then times by 11. So because it's non-calculator, I'm going to keep pi as pi. And I'm going to take 36 and times by 11. So I take 36 and multiply it by 11. This is a nice multiplication. 1 times 6 is 6. 1 times 3 is 3. 1 times 6 is 6. 1 times 3 is 3. When I add, I get 6, 9, 3. So this becomes 396. But because your test is multiple choice, it's not going to look like this. It's going to be written as 396 pi. And if you're on the non-calculator, this is what your answer would look like. But suppose you're on the calculator section. If you are on the calculator section, you will take out your calculator and you would enter, I'm going to put a star from here. Where you see this star, this is where you're going to start to enter. I'm going to use pi as it is, multiply 6. Now the 6 is squared. This is your square function. If you need to square anything, this is the function you have to press after you enter your integer. So I'm going to press that. Notice I have my 6 squared. And finally, I'm going to multiply by 11. And hit enter. Notice I get the 396 pi. Now because all my numbers are, let's say, whole numbers, they're going to write it as 396 pi. But if you're on the test and you need a decimal, you see this button right here? This is what's called a toggle. So I'm going to press that, and when I do, it's going to change my answer to a decimal. There you go. Your answer is converted to a decimal, and I said round to the nearest tenth. The 0 is in the 10th position. I look at the digit to the immediate right because we're rounding. Because 7 is greater than 5, that 0 is going to increase by 1. So my answer is 1244.1. And always remember, volume is measured in cubic dimensions. And by dimensions, I mean inches, feet, yards, miles, kilometers. So this will be 1244.1 inches to the third power. The reason I'm telling you that is when you get your word problem on the TASC test, they might not say find a volume. They might say how many cubic inches. And because they said cubic inches, you know you mean volume. Here's my second cylinder. I have to find a volume. The formula is volume equals pi r squared height. Let's look to see what we have. The 6.4 is your height. Now this 8.5 inches is cutting my circle in half. Because it's cutting my circle in half, it is the diameter. But my formula doesn't have a D in it, it has the R. So my radius would be to take my diameter, which is 8.5, and divide it by 2. That will give me a value of 4.25. You can get your calculator and divide it. You will get 4.25. Let's put everything into my formula. Remember, we keep pi as pi. Okay, it's going to be 4.2 squared. And then my height is 6.4. And let's put everything in the calculator. Pi times. Now you don't have to put the parentheses. You can just type 4.25. You have to square it. So let's square and then multiply by 6.4. Since my radius is a decimal and my height is a decimal, they're going to give me my answer as a decimal. So when I enter, notice my answer, but I must round to the nearest tenth. The 1 is in the 10th position. The digit to the right is 6. Therefore, this 1 becomes a 2. So my answer is 363.2. And remember, volume is measured in cubic inches. Okay, here we have cones. So I have 2 cones. So I go to my formula sheet. I find cone, and this is my formula. So the formula for the volume of a cone is 1/3 pi r squared times your height. So I look to see what I have. So as before, for the first one, I'm not going to use the calculator. I'm going to show you how to calculate this without the calculator. So I noticed that right here, I start from the center and go to the edge, so that 3 is my radius. Therefore, the 9 is my height. So I have 1/3 pi. Okay, my radius is 3, which I have to square, and my height is 9. So I'm on the test and I can't use my calculator because I'm on part 2. So what are you going to do? I'm going to have 1/3. I'm going to keep my pi as pi. 3 squared is 9 because it's 3 times 3. And then I have to times by 9. So I get 1/3 pi. Now 9 times 9 is 81. Now right here, notice I have this third, 1/3 pi. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this 81 and divide it by 3. So if I take 81 and divide it by 3, 3 goes into 8 2 times, which gives me 6. Subtract, I get 2. Bring down the 1. 3 goes into 21 7 times. So your final step is to take that 81 and divide it by 3. So my answer is 27 pi. That's if I'm on the non-calculator. Now, if you're on the non-calculator and their answer is a decimal, and here's the thing I like about the TASC test. The answers are far apart. So remember, pi has a value of 3.14. So if I'm on the TASC test, if I want to guesstimate my answer, I will take my 27 and I'll times it by 3. So it's like, okay, 3 times 7 is 21. 3 times 2 is 6. Plus 2 is 8. So that will be 81 point something, something, something. So I would choose the closest answer to 81. Now, if you're on the calculator, this is what you would put in the calculator. I'm putting a square around it. So let's get my calculator to enter that fraction. So I'm going to enter 1. Now, n/d is your fraction function. Let's press that. When I press it, notice that the 1 went in the numerator and the value for the denominator is blinking. So I'm going to enter 3. Now notice where your cursor is at. It's in the denominator. We need to move it from there to the middle. So we go to the right. Notice where your cursor is at. Multiply pi times 3 squared times 9. And we're finished. When I hit enter, notice I get the 27 pi that I got when I did it manually. Now, if we want our answer as a decimal, the toggle, and notice I got 84, because remember, it was 3.14, so your answer is going to be close to 81, but I didn't do the 3.14, so here's my answer. I'm going to round this to the nearest tenth. The 8 is in the tenth. The digit to the right is 2. Because it's less than 5, the 8 will remain. So my answer is 84.8, and this will be inches to the 3rd power. Okay, here's another cone. I have to find a volume. My formula is 1/3 pi r squared times height. Let's see what we have. So the 20 right here is my height, but notice that the value here for 10 is cutting the circular base in half. So that 10 is your diameter. Therefore, to get the radius, I'm going to have that. So the radius would be 10 divided by 2, which is 5. So when I start to fill in my formula, it's a third pi, r is 5, so that will be 5 squared, and my height is 20. And I'm going to use the calculator. 1, n over d, and 3. Remember, go to the right. I'm going to multiply. I need my pi times 5 squared, times, last number is 20. And enter. Notice I got 500 over 3 pi. But if I want my answer as a decimal, toggle. When I toggle, I get 523.6. And it's 0.6 because here's the 5 in the 10th. The digit to the right is 9, which is greater than 5, so I would have to add 1. So it's 523.6 yards to the third power, cubic yards. Okay, finally, we're down to our last shape, which is the spheres. Remember, spheres look like Earth. So I look at my shape, it's a sphere. I find sphere, and I find the formula. So volume is 4 over 3 pi r to the third power. Okay, let's look at our sphere. I noticed that the distance here is from the center to the edge, so that 12 is radius. Yay! I don't have to do anything. Just chuck everything in the formula. So this will be 4 over 3. Keep pi is pi. Radius is 12 raised to the third power. So I'm going to put everything in the calculator. So again, we're making a fraction. So 4 n over d, 3. Okay, remember we have to go to the right. Times pi times 12. Now, the 12 is to the third power. Now, if you want an exponent higher than 2, we're going to use this function right here. I can't remember the life of me what is the correct name. What is stuck in my head is what my students call it all the time, which is arrowhead. So I have to go look up what's the correct name. So we're going to press this. This gives us any other exponent greater than 2. So when you press that, notice you have the exponent right here, and notice there's nothing in there. So we're going to enter our 3, and then I always go to the right because I always want to get the cursor right in the middle. Look at what's on your calculator and look at what you wrote on your scrap paper, and we hit enter. Notice my answer is 2,304 pi, 2,304 pi. And if we wanted this as a decimal, we just need to hit the toggle. And our answer would be 7,238. And the 2 here is in the 10th digit to the right. It's less than 5, so it'll be 2. So we have 7,238.2 cubic feet. Okay, here I have another sphere. Volume equals 4 over 3 pi times radius to the third power. Okay, now I look here and I notice that this distance, which is going through the center and cutting my circle in half, is diameter. So this 5 is my diameter. We cannot use the 5 because it does not represent radius. So to get the radius would be take 5 and divide it by 2. That will give me 2.5. That's what I'm going to put into my formula. So V equals 4 over 3 pi. My radius is 2.5, and I'm going to raise it to the third power. Let's put all of that in our calculator. So 4 n over d, 3 to the right, multiply, pi, multiply. My radius is 2.5. You don't need the parentheses. 2.5. And we need the third power, so we need the arrowhead right here. And put the 3 and go to the right. We're done. Hit enter. So my answer is 65.4. 65.4 feet to the third power. Now I hope this lesson has been helpful. We were finding the volume of a cylinder, a cone, and a sphere. And I gave you these shapes with radius, and I also gave them with diameter. And we also used the calculator. If this calculator is new to you, I would suggest that you practice, but these are pretty simple. Check out my videos when I did word problems, but this was just what I call a foundational video where you're plugging everything into the formula and using the calculator. And also I'm showing you how to calculate without the calculator as well, because I know sometimes you get on the non-calculator section, and for some folks, the arithmetic walk right out their brain. It just exits stage left, and you can't let that happen to you on the TASC test. I hope this has been helpful. Good luck on your examination. If you find this content helpful, please like and don't forget to subscribe. Have a great day.